I grew up in a world of private schools, country clubs, and family names that opened doors before I even walked through them. But I never realized how toxic that privilege could become until I fell in love with someone my parents deemed unsuitable. My name is Charlotte, and at 25, I thought I understood my family's values and expectations. My parents, Richard and Victoria Ashworth, had baked their fortune through generations of careful investments, strategic marriages, and maintaining connections within Boston's most exclusive social circles. They raised me to believe that our family's reputation and social standing were more important than personal happiness or individual choice. When I met Jake Martinez, a hard-working electrician from a middle-class Hispanic family, I knew my parents would disapprove. But I never imagined they would completely disown me for choosing love over their antiquated class system and social expectations. Jake and I met during my final semester at Harvard Business School, when he was doing electrical work in the building where I attended classes every day. Unlike the entitled trust fund classmates I was surrounded by, Jake possessed genuine kindness, incredible work ethic, and refreshing honesty about life and relationships. He had put himself through trade school while supporting his younger siblings, and he treated everyone with respect, regardless of their social status or financial situation. Our conversations during coffee breaks revealed his intelligence, ambition, and dreams of starting his own electrical contracting business someday. When I brought him to meet my parents 6 months after we started dating, their reaction was swift and brutal. They barely spoke to him during dinner, made condescending comments about his career choice, and later accused me of throwing away everything they had given me for some working-class fantasy that would never last beyond a few months. The ultimatum came 3 weeks before our planned wedding, delivered with cold precision that still makes my heart ache when I remember that conversation. My father called me into his study, the same room where he had taught me about investments and family legacy throughout my childhood, and presented me with what he called a final opportunity to come to your senses. He offered to pay for an elaborate European vacation if I would break off the engagement, along with a promise to find me a suitable husband from one of their approved social circles within the year. When I refused and explained that I loved Jake deeply and planned to marry him regardless of their approval, my mother dramatically declared that I was no longer their daughter, and that my name would be removed from all family documents, including the will and trust funds they had established for my future. They made it clear that choosing Jake meant choosing a life without their support, financial backing, or family connection, and they seemed confident I would eventually return, begging for forgiveness when reality set in. Jake and I married in a small ceremony attended by his loving family and a few close friends who understood that true love transcends artificial social barriers and outdated class distinctions. My parents refused to attend, and they made sure their social circle knew they had disowned their ungrateful daughter for her poor choices and rebellious behavior. The first few years were financially challenging as we built our life together without any help from my family's wealth or connections. Jake worked incredibly hard to establish his electrical business, while I used my business degree to help manage the financial and administrative aspects of our growing company. We lived in a modest apartment, drove used cars, and carefully saved every dollar we could toward building something meaningful together. Despite the financial struggles, I had never been happier or felt more fulfilled than I did building a life based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine partnership with someone who truly understood my dreams and ambitions. Over the next 15 years, Jake's electrical contracting business grew beyond our wildest expectations, eventually becoming one of the largest and most respected companies in the region. His reputation for quality work, fair pricing, and treating employees well attracted major commercial contracts and wealthy residential clients who recommended us to their networks. I had started my own investment consulting firm, using the financial knowledge my father had taught me to help middle-class families build wealth and secure their futures. Together, we had built a small empire worth over $8 million, including our stunning $5 million estate on 30 acres outside the city. We had two beautiful children, Emma and Lucas, who grew up understanding the value of hard work while enjoying privileges that Jake and I had earned through our dedication and business acumen. Our success was built on merit, determination, and treating people with dignity, regardless of their background, everything my parents claimed to value but never actually practiced in their daily lives. The irony of our current situation became apparent 2 months ago when my parents, now in their 70s, found themselves facing serious financial difficulties after a series of poor investments and economic downturns had depleted most of their once substantial fortune. Their accountant, who happened to be a mutual acquaintance, had informed them about my family's wealth and success. Something they had remained deliberately ignorant about during our 15 years of estrangement. My mother called me for the first time since my wedding day, her voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion as she apologized for their misunderstanding and expressed regret about missing so many years of their grandchildren's lives. She carefully avoided mentioning their financial troubles directly, instead focusing on how much they had missed me and how wrong they had been about Jake, who she now described as obviously a good provider and devoted husband. The conversation felt surreal. Hearing her praise the same man she had once dismissed as beneath our family's standards and social expectations. Their true motivations became clear during their second phone call, when my father awkwardly explained their current, temporary financial setback and wondered if Jake and I might have room in our large home for them to stay, while they sorted out some business matters. He mentioned that they were facing foreclosure on their family estate and needed somewhere to live within the next 60 days. The man who had once called Jake an unsuitable fortune hunter was now asking to move into the home that Jake's hard work and business success had built. I listened quietly as my father attempted to justify their request, claiming that families should support each other during difficult times. The same family bonds he had severed when I refused to abandon the man I loved. The conversation ended with me promising to discuss their situation with Jake and get back to them soon, though I already knew exactly what my response would be after consulting with my husband. Jake, displaying the same grace and wisdom that had attracted me to him 16 years earlier, listened thoughtfully to my parents' request and suggested we invite them for dinner to discuss their situation face-to-face rather than over the phone. When my parents arrived at our estate, their expressions of shock and grudging admiration at our obvious wealth and success were almost comical to witness. They fawned over Jake, praising his business acumen and impressive achievements, while carefully avoiding any mention of their previous treatment or the cruel things they had said about his character and prospects. During dinner, prepared by our private chef in our elegant dining room, they spoke glowingly about how proud they were of our accomplishments and how much they regretted losing touch during the busy years of building our respective careers and lives. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Watching them pretend their 15-year absence had been some kind of mutual misunderstanding rather than their deliberate choice to cut me out of their lives completely. When they finally made their formal request to move into our guest house temporarily, I exchanged a meaningful look with Jake before responding with calm clarity about our decision regarding their living situation. I explained that while we appreciated their newfound interest in our family, we had built our success and happiness without their support or approval, and we saw no reason to change that arrangement now. I reminded them that they had made their choice 15 years ago when they decided their social status was more important than their daughter's happiness, and that Jake and I had made our peace with their decision long ago. As I watched their faces fall when they realized we would not be providing the financial rescue they desperately needed, I felt a deep sense of closure rather than revenge, knowing that sometimes the best response to past cruelty is simply living well and maintaining the boundaries that protect the family you have chosen and built with love, respect, and shared values that transcend artificial social distinctions. This is a revenge story about Charlotte, whose wealthy parents disowned her for marrying Jake, an electrician they considered beneath their class. 15 years later, after Charlotte and Jake built an $8 million empire, including a $5 million estate, her now broke parents who face foreclosure come begging to move in. Charlotte refuses, letting them face the consequences of their earlier cruelty and class prejudice.